this video, you'll learn a number of ways of using matrices on the graphics calculator. You're going to learn how to insert a matrix using the Maths Templates button, as well as inserting a matrix using the menu button. After you've inserted or before you've inserted, you're either going to store it as a letter or define it as a letter, which becomes very useful later on. After that, we will look at our operations. So we're talking about adding, subtracting and multiplying matrices. And here I'm talking about matrix multiplication, where we're multiplying one matrix by another matrix. Then we'll briefly go over scalar multiplication, which is when you've just got a single matrix and you are simply scaling it up or scaling it down. So for example, you might be scaling up by 3, or you might be scaling it down by a third. Then we're going to look at powers of matrices. So this is squaring, cubing, etc. And this also includes the inverse matrix, since inverse just means to the power of -1. And lastly, if you want to use the graphics calculator to work out a determinant for a particular matrix, I'm also going to show you how to do that. So let's get started. Let's start by adding a matrix using the Maths Templates button. The Maths Templates button is located just here. And you can see that once it's pressed, you have a number of different templates that you can use in your calculations. Currently, the 2x2 matrix is selected, but if we move to the right, we have the 1x2 matrix, a 2x1 matrix, or the last option where we can specify what our order of our matrix is going to be. For now, we're just going to do a 2x2 matrix, so all we need to do is press Enter to get that template to come up on our screen. We're going to insert the elements 1, 2, 3 and 4 into this matrix. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. My preferred method is to just press 1 and then press the Tab button, then press 2, Tab, 3, Tab, 4. But equally we could have used any of these navigation keys here to move around our template, and indeed at the end move out of our template as shown here. Now we're going to add a matrix using the menu functions. To do this, we start by pressing Menu, and then we want to do number 7, Matrix and Vector. Now you can scroll down like this using the navigation keys to get down to it, or you could just press 7 to select that option. We want to press 1 to create or enter to create, and then we want to again press either 1 or enter to choose matrix. Now we have this create a matrix box pop up where we tell the calculator how many rows and how many columns we want to enter. So let's just say that we didn't want to do a 2x2 this time, we wanted to do a 3 row by 2 column. We could just press delete to get rid of the 2 and enter in 3. You can press tab to get down to the next box, and we're happy with 2 columns, and then tab to get down to OK and press enter, and now we have our 3x2 matrix. Just like on the previous slide, if we want to enter in the elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, you can press 1, tab, 2, tab, 3, etc. Or we could use our navigation keys, so press to the right, 4, down and to the left, 5, and to the right, 6. And again, we're done. And if we wanted to exit out of this matrix template, we need to navigate to the right to get out of that template. Now let's say we want to store our matrix as a pronumeral, or in other words, store it as a letter. First we need to insert a matrix using either the templates or the menu. So my preferred method is using the Maths Templates button, so I'll just insert a 2x2. I'll just put in some elements here. Then I'm going to need to actually exit this template. So see how I'm still in the template, I need to get out of this before I do the next step. So I'll press 1 to the right to get out. And now we want to store it. So to store, we need to press Control var. See how there's a STO button on top? That means store. So you need to press Control var or variable to activate that store function. You can see an arrow has appeared here, so it's showing this matrix is going to be stored as, and now you choose what you want to call it. So for this one we're just going to call it A. Then once we've pressed enter, you can see that it has just appeared here again, and if we press A, enter, you'll see that A really means the matrix with elements 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have successfully stored this matrix under the letter A. Now we can do a lot of things. We can add, subtract, we can multiply this matrix by either a scalar or by itself, by squaring, by cubing, or we can multiply it by another matrix. Really from here the options are virtually endless. Now we're going to define a matrix, and this is really the same thing as storing it, but just using a different pathway to do that. So let's press menu, let's choose number 1 for actions, number 1 for define, and we're going to define now a matrix as the pronumeral B, so we'll press B, we'll press equals, and then we need to insert whatever the matrix is that we are now calling B. So I'm going to insert another 2 by 2 matrix, and this time I'm going to use the elements 5, 6, 7, 8, and once I press enter, that pronumeral B is now that matrix 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going to look at doing operations with matrices. So we can add matrices, we can subtract one matrix from another matrix, and we can even multiply matrices. But we can't divide them. So when we're using matrices, if we needed to divide them, really what we end up doing is multiply the matrix by its inverse. That's essentially what we need to do when we need to divide one matrix by another matrix. Before continuing, make sure you know how to insert a matrix and how to store or define it, which we've already gone over in this video. Also, it's really important to note that after you insert a matrix's elements, but before you use any sort of operation, make sure you've exited the matrix template by pressing the navigation button to the right. Otherwise, if you start sort of subtracting a different matrix, you're actually still going to be in the first matrix, and it's just not going to work. Now that we've stored matrix A and matrix B, we can add them, subtract them, and multiply them very easily. To add them, we just press A plus B and hit enter, and there you go. The calculator's done it for you. If we wanted to subtract them, we just go A minus B, enter, and it's done. And if we wanted to multiply those two, we would just do A times B equals. And as you'll know from doing it by hand, even though we can multiply by hand, it's much easier to enter it into the calculator and get the calculator to do the heavy lifting for us. Now let's do some scalar multiplication of a matrix. So the first thing we need to do is to type in the scalar quantity. Now all this means is you look at whatever the number is out the front of the matrix, and that is our scalar quantity. So in this case our scalar is 4. So we type in 4, and now we want to insert a matrix using either the templates button, which is this one here, or using the menu button up here. Or if you've previously defined a pronumeral like A or B, you could just type that one in now. So we're going to use the templates menu here, and we are going to go across to the right so that we can specify a 2 by 3 in this case matrix. So we're going to make it 2 rows, tab, number of columns 3, that looks good, tab, and then enter to insert it. And then let's go through and insert each of those elements into our matrix. Now that we've done that, all we need to do is press enter, and the calculator has now scaled up that matrix 4 times. So 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times -5 is -20, etc. So it's done that with just the click of a button. Notice here how you didn't even need to put in the multiply symbol. So between the 4 and the matrix, we didn't press times. We just typed in the 4 and then we inserted our matrix. So this can be a very, very slight time saver, but yeah, you don't need to do it. Now we're going to look at quickly doing some powers of a matrix. So I've already gone ahead and stored the matrix A as the elements 3, 5, -6 and 2. And to do A squared, all I need to type in is the letter A, and then this button here, our square button, hit enter, and that is A squared, the matrix A squared. If we wanted to do a different power, for example A cubed, we'd press A, but now because we don't have a cube button, we're going to need to press this symbol here, which takes us up into the power position. We press 3 because we're doing cubed, and hit enter, and there is our A cubed matrix. If we want to find the inverse, which is very important, for example when you are solving systems of equations, you press A, this button here to get us up into the powers template, and then you can either press this negative sign here and the number 1, or I'm just going to go back, you could press this negative sign here and the number 1. Either of those, once you press enter, will give you that inverse matrix. So you can see this one has a lot of fractions in it. We can work out the inverse by hand, but of course doing it on the calculator means we're less prone to making mistakes, and it's also much quicker. If you wanted to work out the determinant of a matrix, and let's call the elements of the matrix A, B, C and D as shown here, then the determinant is A times D, whatever that is, and then subtract from that C times B. So instead of doing this by hand, you can get the calculator to do it for you. If you'd like to use the graphics calculator to work out the determinant for you, there are at least 2 different ways of doing this. For the first way, you would press Menu, you'd choose number 7, Matrix and Vector, then you'd choose number 3, which is Determinant. From here, you would either need to put in your matrix using the Maths Templates button, which is this one here, if you can remember that, the Menu button up here, or I've already actually stored this matrix under the letter A, so I can just type in A. And once you hit enter, it will give you the determinant. So the determinant for this matrix here is 36. If you didn't want to remember those steps, the menu 7, 3, then you could just type in DET for determinant like this, DET. Then start your brackets, and then again, just as before, put in the letter A and then enter. So that's another way you can do it. If you don't want to go through the menus, you just type in DET and then start your brackets, because determinant is abbreviated on this calculator to DET. That's it for Matrices Video 1. I hope you've taken away a lot from this video and you now feel confident inserting, storing and using different matrices in your calculations. Thanks for watching.